Welcome to the last part of the lecture on the endocrine system. In the last video, I did explain the functions of the hypothalamus and also for the pituitary gland. We said there was the anterior pituitary and the posterior pituitary glands, and we saw the parts that secrete hormones and the part that stores and releases hormones. We saw the function of the hypothalamus in the release of the hormones from the anterior pituitary gland, and we went ahead to see the thyroid. I said a lot of things about the thyroid, and I said basically the thyroid gland is found in the neck, just in front of the trachea. It has the right lobe and the left lobe linked by what we call the isthmus of the thyroid gland. And that the thyroid gland has two types of cells. We have the follicular cells and the parafollicular cells. The follicular cells, we call them actually the cells that secrete thyroxine. And thyroxine, there are two forms of thyroxine. You have the T3 and the T4. And I did say that the thyroxine hormone is actually lipid soluble, so it means it can actually be able to cross the biological membrane. Okay, and then we went ahead to see the other types of cells that we call the parafollicular cells or the C cells, and these cells are responsible for the production of calcitonin. And we said calcitonin is a hormone which helps in calcium metabolism. It helps to reduce the level of calcium 2+ in blood, so it is hypocalcemic. When there is a lot of calcium, it helps in order to reabsorb calcium from blood and send them to bone. And of course, calcium is being stored in bone in the form of hydroxyapatite, and if there is a decrease in the level of calcium 2+ in blood, therefore the level of phosphate should also be decreased. Then we went ahead to see the parathyroid gland and said there were 4 to 6 of them, which are just attached behind the thyroid. And we said the parathyroid gland secretes what we call the parathyroid hormone, and the parathyroid hormone actually is responsible for increasing the level of calcium 2+ in blood, so it mediates the reabsorption of calcium 2+ from the bone into blood. And of course, if there is reabsorption of calcium 2+ from bone into blood, it is also going to have an effect on the level of phosphate ions in blood. Okay, and I think that's it. If you are being asked for the hormones of for calcium metabolism, you know that of course it is going to be calcitonin and parathyroid hormones. Okay, and then so far we said the thyroid gland actually helps in what we call basal metabolic rate or basal metabolism. Now, what is basal metabolic rate? It is the energy. When we talk about the basal metabolic rate, it is the amount of energy which an organism actually needs to survive at rest. Okay, and we usually take the energy at sleep to be approximately the energy which it signifies basal metabolism. That is, tries to define the metabolism which takes place when an organism is completely at rest. And during that time, you are not stressful. You are sleeping and you're resting, and just in fact, all of your organs are functioning at a basal rate. There is no extreme demands of oxygen or release of carbon dioxide. Okay, and so today we are going to be looking at the pancreas. Okay, I'll first of all talk about the pancreas, and then after I talk about the pancreas, then I'm going to go ahead to talk to you guys about the adrenal glands, and from the adrenal glands I'll talk to you about the gonads. But for the gonads, you can go ahead to look for the lectures which I earlier gave on reproduction. For the videos on reproduction, you're going to see the hormonal control of somatogenesis and the hormonal control of oogenesis. Okay, so for this part, I'll just go ahead to talk about the pancreas, and here of course I'll also talk a little bit about homeostasis of the level of glucose in blood, because I can't talk about the pancreas without talking about that, because that's actually the function of the endocrine part of the pancreas, which comes from the islets of Langerhans. Now, the pancreas is one of the very important organs of digestion, or let me say one of the very important glands. As said, is 99% exocrine and 1% endocrine. Now, this exocrine function is actually in the digestion of food. Okay, when it secretes pancreatic juice, and the pancreatic juice takes care of all the foods, all the food particles which are found in the duodenum. We talk about the exocrine function of the pancreas. Now, when we talk about the endocrine function of the pancreas, we are talking about the regulation of blood sugar level, and this is done with the help of insulin and glucagon. So this part of the pancreas, which we call the islets of Langerhans, there are spots like cells which are scattered throughout, okay, the pancreas that we call the islets of Langerhans, and there are actually basically two types of cells. You have the alpha cells of the pancreas. So we are talking about the pancreas, and the pancreas has two types of cells, alpha cells, and it has what we call beta cells. Now for alpha cells are the ones that secrete glucagon. Don't make the mistake of saying that alpha cells secrete insulin. Beta cells secrete insulin, and all of these are found as what we call the islet of Langerhans, okay, which are found within the pancreas. So what are the functions of glucagon and insulin? Now the function of insulin, I will start with the function of insulin first, okay, and then I will go to glucagon. Now just imagine after you take a meal of a carbohydrate meal, let's say for example you've taken a cube of sugar. Now when you're going to the hospital to measure your blood sugar level, they usually tell you not to eat, okay, they're measuring the fasting blood sugar level. Now this fasting blood sugar level, it tells us the amount of glucose which is found in your blood when you have not yet eaten. So it is from there that we can be able to know the normal. Because after you take any carbohydrate meal, it shoots up, okay, the level actually shoots up to a very high value. So we won't know. The normal level of glucose in blood at advanced level, I think we take something like 90 milligrams, 90 milligrams per, or let me say 0.9 grams, 0.9 grams per liter, okay, 0.9 grams per liter, I think it's 90 milligrams per 100 cm cube of blood, okay. So you have 0.9, but actually it's actually a range from 0.7 to 1.111 gram per liter. So this is the normal range of glucose in blood. So if we measure the level of glucose in blood and it's above this, that's the fasting blood sugar level and it's above this, it means that there is actually a problem. And if it's actually below, therefore there's a problem. So when it is above the normal range, we call it hyperglycemia. When you say anemia, this word anemia means blood. Okay, when you hear blood, you know it is anemia. Then so glycemia means hyper means very high, and gly means it refers to glucose, and anemia means blood. So hyperglycemia means high levels of glucose in blood. Now if it's below the level, we talk about hypoglycemia. Okay, we say it is the person is hypoglycemic. Now what insulin does is that insulin responds to very high levels of glucose in blood. So after you have taken a meal and the levels of a carbohydrate meal and the level of glucose in your blood is very high, what happens is that the beta cells of the islets of Langerhans are going to detect that very high level of glucose in blood, and they are going to secrete insulin. Now there are some cells in the liver and the muscle cells that have receptors for insulin. So insulin is going to bind to them. So please take note of the level. All right. So when the normal level of glucose in blood is higher than the normal range, which is averagely 0.9 grams per liter, or you say from 0. If it's above the upper limit, that's 1.1 gram per liter. The beta cells of the islets of Langerhans detect it and then they secrete insulin. What insulin does is that insulin, remember how hormones function. Insulin is going to bind to its receptors. Alright? Insulin binds to its receptors and mediates the opening of those receptors, and then the receptors, it causes the insulin, it binds to its receptors and cause some channel of specific channels of glucose to open on the cell membrane. Now when those specific channels of insulin of glucose open on the cell membrane, the more glucose is going to be let into the cell. So what happens is that insulin binds, okay? Insulin binds to the cell. Maybe let's say this is the receptor. If this is the receptor, and this is insulin that binds here. When insulin binds to the cell, okay, it induces the opening of some key, because insulin acts as a key. So it induces the opening of some glucose channels, okay, and it allows glucose to flow into the cell. So more glucose is going to enter into the cell. So what insulin does is that insulin is going to increase uptake of glucose by the cells. That is, remember, the aim of insulin is to reduce the level of glucose in blood. So insulin will bind and induce cause cells to be much more permeable to glucose, okay, and so they are going to take in cells are going to take up more glucose into them. And then insulin also favors the conversion of glucose to glycogen. So more of glucose will be converted and stored as glycogen within the cells, therefore reducing the level of glucose in blood. Insulin is going to cause excess glucose to be converted to lipids and stored in adipose tissue. Okay, that is one of the ways by which insulin decreases the level of glucose in blood. The next thing is that insulin is going to cause cells to use to prefer glucose as the source of energy. So there will be increased metabolism or increased usage of glucose to produce energy within the cell, therefore burning up the excess glucose, okay, and bringing back the high level of glucose to normal, okay, back to the normal range. So again, we have seen the things that insulin does. Insulin binds to receptors, causes cells to become more permeable to glucose, so the cells take up more glucose. It causes the glucose to be converted to lipids, okay, and stored in adipose tissue, and it causes glucose to be converted to glycogen, and also to lipids that will be stored in adipose tissue. I already said that. And we are going to have increased metabolism, okay, of glucose to produce energy, so thereby burning the excess glucose and reducing the normal level of glucose back to normal, okay. Now the next thing is glucagon. So we say insulin is going to be hypoglycemic. Why? Because insulin helps to reduce the level of glucose in blood. So when there is high level of glucose, insulin helps to decrease it. Now the next thing is what we are going to talk about is glucagon, okay. If there is a very low level of glucose in blood, okay, that low level of glucose in blood is going to be detected by the alpha cells of the islets of Langerhans, and those alpha cells are detected and they secrete glucagon. So glucagon is going to do the opposite of what insulin does. So we say that glucagon and insulin are antagonistic. Okay, glucagon and insulin are antagonistic because they act in opposite fashion. So insulin has a goal of reducing the level of glucose in blood, while the glucagon has a goal of instead increasing it when it is low. So what happens is that glucagon will reduce, when it binds to the cells, glucagon reduces the uptake of glucose by cells, okay, because the goal is to make sure that a certain level of glucose reaches in blood. So glucagon binds to the cells and reduces the permeability of the cells to the glucose. What it does is that it facilitates the conversion of glycogen stores into glucose instead. Okay, you see, it is the opposite. And then the next thing it does is that it also causes conversion of fat in the adipose tissues back to glucose, okay, which we call neoglycogenesis. And then it also decreases the glucose metabolism within the cells to make sure that enough glucose is present to be left in blood in order to elevate the level of glucose. Now this could be possible during fasting. Okay, this could be possible during fasting. Insulin can be secreted immediately after a meal, but glucagon is going to be secreted during fasting when you are actually fasting. The level of glucose in your blood has been exhausted, so glucagon is going to be secreted to make sure that the stores of glucose, which is stored as glycogen, will be converted to glucose, or the fats which are found in the adipose tissue will be converted back to glucose, or maybe proteins. Okay, amino acids can also be converted through other parts, and we call it neoglycogenesis. Or you say gluconeogenesis or neoglucogenesis. Neoglucogenesis. Okay, neoglucogenesis. So that is a for the function of, that is the function of the endocrine function, that is all about the summary of the endocrine function of the pancreas. So if you're being asked in the exam to give the regulation of blood sugar level, I've already given you, that's what I was explaining, and that is all about the pancreas under the endocrine system. Now we are going to move on to talking about the adrenal glands. We did say yesterday that or in the previous lecture that adrenal glands have the adrenal glands, they are located on top of the kidneys. Okay, they're located on top of the kidneys, and we saw that the adrenocorticotropic hormone, which is being secreted by the anterior pituitary, actually has an action, okay, on the adrenal cortex. So here we are going to see all of that. So if you want to use some biological terms, you can be able to say that glycolysis is the, of course, glycolysis is breaking down glucose, okay, during respiration, which is in one of our lectures. Now let's talk about the adrenals, the adrenal glands, the adrenals, okay. Now the adrenal glands are located on top of the kidneys, okay. One of them is pyramidal in shape, that is the left, and the right is actually crescent in shape. Now what happens is that the adrenal gland is divided into two. It has a cortex and it has a medulla. So from the outside it has a capsule. Most glands have capsule that cover them, okay. And then from the outside it's going to have, let me go a little bit up, okay. If this is our adrenal gland, it is going to have an outer cortex and an inner medulla, okay. So this one is going to be the medulla and this one is going to be the cortex. Now the cortex, on the other hand, is divided into three zones. The first zone is called the zona glomerulosa. The first zone is called the zona glomerulosa. Second zone is called, okay, from outside to inside. From the first layer outside is called the zona glomerulosa. The second layer is called the zona fasciculata. And the inner zone of the cortex is called the zona reticularis. Okay. Now, of course, let me put it like this: is the cortex, and this is the medulla. Now, if we are starting with remember the hormone that acts here to influence the production of other hormones, okay, from the pituitary gland, is the adrenocorticotropic hormone, ACTH. Adrenocorticotropic hormone, okay, hormone, ACTH, okay. That's the spelling. It actually acts on the cortex, all right, because the cortex produces a lot of hormones, okay, which you're going to see. Now, if I can wipe this out, all right, already you know this is the cortex and this is the medulla, okay. You can take this off. Now, I want you to look at something. From the zona glomerulosa, which kind of hormones are being secreted at that level? The kind of hormones that are secreted at that level are called mineralocorticoids. Okay? Are called mineralocorticoids. Okay? Those are hormones, okay? And remember that all the hormones which are being secreted in the zona glomerulosa are actually steroid hormones. If you don't know what steroid hormones are, go back to our first lecture on the endocrine system and you're going to get all the details about the steroid hormones. They are actually derived from cholesterol, okay? So you have mineralocorticoids, and these hormones here take care of sugars, of salt they are involved in salt metabolism. So they either help maybe in absorption of salt from the kidneys, regulation of salt level in blood. So sometimes when the level of sodium is low, these hormones are going to help to absorb sodium plus from the kidneys, and maybe help in excretion of potassium plus ions. And the most prominent hormone, which is an example of a mineralocorticoid, is aldosterone. Okay, aldosterone is a very, very prominent example of that kind of hormone, and it actually acts on the kidneys to help in the reabsorption of sodium plus and excretion of potassium ions. Okay, at the distal convoluted tubule of the kidneys. Now the second layer, which is the zona fasciculata, is involved in glucose metabolism. So its own hormones which it secretes are actually involved in sugar metabolism. So an example of this one, so we call them glucocorticoids. Glucocorticoids involved in sugar metabolism, and an example here is cortisol. Okay, an example of these hormones is cortisol. So we call it glucocorticoids because they take care of sugars, okay, especially glucose. And then the last layer, which is the zona reticularis, secretes what we call androgens. Okay, it secretes hormones that we call androgens, and androgens are male hormones, e.g. testosterone. Testosterone is a very prominent example. You can also have what we call dihydrotestosterone. Okay, you can have dihydroepiandrosterone and so on. But the most prominent one which you should get should be testosterone. Okay, testosterone should be the most prominent of androgens. Androgens are male hormones, and that is why in the female you actually have a very small quantity of testosterone, because all of us have adrenals. Okay, we all have adrenal glands. So you see the very first layer here, zona glomerulosa is involved with salt metabolism. Okay, so it involves salt, right? The zona fasciculata secretes glucocorticoids which take care of sugars. Okay, which take care of sugars, and then the zona reticularis actually secretes hormones, binding hormones which take care of, okay, we call them sex hormones. So that is why, as a mnemonic, for you to be able to remember properly, we usually use a mnemonic. The deeper you go, the sweeter it becomes. Okay, you need from salt to sugar to sex. Okay, so in order for you to remember how the hormones are being secreted, you go in that order. Now, when somebody has a very high level of secretion of glucocorticoids, of cortisol, for example, the person is going to experience what we call Cushing's syndrome. Okay, Cushing's syndrome, and a lot of secretion of aldosterone is going to lead to what we call Addison's disease. Okay, so Cushing's syndrome for hyperproduction of cortisol, or the Cushing's syndrome. Okay, and for aldosterone we call it Addison's disease. Okay, and then for hypersecretion of the thyroxine, we talked about Graves' disease. Okay, Graves' disease is hyperproduction of the thyroid hormone. Okay, Cushing syndrome is hyperproduction of cortisol, and Addison's disease is for aldosterone. Okay, and then apart from that, again we have I did not actually mention that we have you could have the thyroid hormone. Okay, thyroid hormone can cause what we call myxedema. Okay, it can cause myxedema in children. Okay, it can cause myxedema in children, and so we can be able to move ahead. Okay, we have discussed about the adrenal cortex. We have seen all the hormones which it secretes. We have seen where they act, what they are involved in. Okay, now let's go to the medulla. The adrenal medulla okay, is actually normally it developed actually from the ectoderm. Actually develops from the ectoderm. Although this part surely developed from this part actually the medulla developed from the ectoderm. Okay, and it is made up of cells that migrated during the development of the embryo that we call chromaffin cells. Chromaffin cells. These chromaffin cells secrete they secrete adrenaline, okay, or noradrenaline. So they secrete the two hormones, chromaffin cells. So you just know that the medulla is actually made up of chromaffin cells, and the chromaffin cells secrete adrenaline and noradrenaline, or you can refer to them as epinephrine and norepinephrine. Adrenaline is also called epinephrine, and noradrenaline is called norepinephrine. So what are the functions of these ones? These ones are involved in the fight-flight response. Okay, when they are being secreted, they help in increasing the heart rate. Remember the function of adrenaline in the sympathetic nervous system. It has the same function here once it's being secreted into blood, but we consider it to be a hormone here because it's being secreted directly into blood. But in the nervous system, where it's being secreted at the end of the neurons, okay, we call it a neurotransmitter. All right, we call it a neurotransmitter, and I think that is all for the adrenal glands. Okay, let's now move to the very last gland, which are the reproductive. Okay, which are the reproductive glands. Okay. Okay, so we've actually so far discussed up to the adrenals, so we are left just with one gland, and then we are going to see a couple of other things.